Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda. Kushaq, choose what really matters.
New Delhi, meanwhile, has received a letter from Kabul. The first official communication from the Taliban. The template and language is interesting. It's written in fluent English, we can tell you, following all conventions and formalities. The letterhead reads, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. The signature is of Al-Hajj Hamidullah Akhundzada, the Taliban civil aviation minister. Yes, they have one now. He has sent his greetings to the DGCA. That's India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA. The Taliban has asked India to resume flights from Delhi to Kabul. Now, as you might be aware, since the Taliban took Kabul, all commercial flights from India to Afghanistan have been suspended. For a while, flights carrying refugees were operational, but those too have been suspended now. So the Taliban wants to resume all those flights. Look at what their letter says. The intention of this letter is to keep smooth passenger movement between the two countries. Therefore, we request you to facilitate commercial flights. The civil aviation of Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan avails its highest assurance. Highest assurance, they say. Do assurances work anymore, though? Last month, the Taliban had assured the world of upholding women's rights. Look what they've done. They've curbed all rights, and they're firing shots to disperse protesting women. The Taliban's assurances must be taken with a sack of salt, which is what India seems to be doing. This letter was dispatched on the 7th of September. It's been more than 3 weeks. The Indian aviation regulator has not responded yet. Guess which countries are running flights to Kabul? Pakistan and China, of course. Pakistan is sending diplomats to Kabul and China is sending aid. On Wednesday night, a Chinese plane carrying aid worth $31 million landed at the Kabul International Airport. The Chinese ambassador says more flights will arrive in the days ahead. And not just aid, China is helping the Taliban diplomatically too. It is speaking in one voice with them in issuing ultimatums to the US. On Wednesday afternoon, the Taliban issued a statement. They warned America against flying drones over the Afghan airspace. This was apparently in response to remarks made by the Pentagon. What did the Pentagon say? That they would conduct over-the-horizon operations in Afghanistan. Drone operations, in other words. The Taliban are not too thrilled with the idea. They say, and I'm quoting again, Afghanistan's sacred airspace is being invaded by US drones. We call on all countries to treat Afghanistan in light of international laws and commitments in order to prevent any negative consequences. The Taliban are talking about international law and China has backed them. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has said, and I quote again, the US should earnestly respect Afghanistan's sovereignty. Listen to this. This is the Chinese statement. Sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity. More importantly, the US should stop habitually imposing wanton military intervention and forcing its own will on others. This is still the Chinese speaking. It should avoid repeating the tragedies of plunging people into misery and suffering. Let me repeat what they said. The Chinese government is telling the Americans territorial integrity, forcing its will on others, plunging people into misery. It's a bit rich coming from China, given how PLA jets regularly violate Taiwan's airspace, how Beijing's diktats have plunged Hong Kong into misery. The Chinese statement is ironical. It is also well-timed. Back in Washington, D.C., a hearing on America's withdrawal from Afghanistan has just concluded. Some big revelations have been made about U.S. drone strikes. General Kenneth McKenzie, who is the head of the U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM, has made a shocking admission. He has admitted what we've been reporting. America's last drone strike in Afghanistan killed at least 10 Afghan civilians, quote-unquote, by mistake. Listen to this.
29 August, we undertook an MQ-9 strike against what we thought was an imminent threat to HKIA. That strike was a mistake, and I take full responsibility for that strike. I was under no pressure from any quarter to conduct the strike. It was based on our intelligence read of the situation on the ground. While in many cases we were right with our intelligence and forestalled ISIS-K attacks, in this case we were wrong, tragically wrong.
Well, that's not all. This four-star general made another big admission, one that is personally linked to the US president. Let me explain the context. In a recent TV interview, President Joe Biden went on record to say that his military advisors did not tell him to keep 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. This is what Biden said, and he stressed repeatedly that no such request was made to him. Turns out the president was lying. General Kenneth McKenzie has contradicted Joe Biden, and he is not alone in doing so. General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, has also contradicted the president. They've both said that they wanted to retain American soldiers in Afghanistan, and that is what they recommended to President Biden.
Yes, my assessment was back in the fall of 20, and it remained consistent throughout, that we should keep a steady state of 2,500, and it could bounce up to 3,500, maybe something like that, in order to move toward a negotiated, gated solution.
Maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. And I also recommended earlier in the fall of 2020 that we maintain 4,500 at that time. Those are my personal views. I also have a view that the withdrawal of those forces would lead inevitably to the collapse of the Afghan military forces and eventually the Afghan government.
Well, had Biden listened to his advisors, the Taliban would not have been in a position to make offers. They wouldn't be sending letters to India to resume flights. Afghanistan today is a product of America's mistakes. The statements of Generals Milley and McKenzie are the latest corroboration of this. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.
Gravitas, co-presented by Skoda. Kushaq, choose what really matters.